I mean, unless you're into dirty socks, you can. It doesn't
Nah,
matter. It's going in gasoline.
I prefer the plastic bag.
I mean, I'm more of a paint, like the spray paint. It's not that bad. Yeah,
You go to
spray in a paper
Valhalla.
bag. You're good.
Valhalla.
Subscribe to Simply Bitcoin.
Little Thousand Islands. Yeah.
Are we there yet?
Just about. Now we're there. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome in. You made it to another episode of the Meme Factory podcast. This is test stream number 97, and this evening we are joined by Cedric Youngelman. Say hello, Cedric.
What's up? How's everybody? Good to be here. I'm psyched.
Hey,
Everybody knows who you are, Yellow. Shut up. Now, before we pop on with some of the show, our sponsors have sent their ad copy over to you in DMs so that you can go ahead and read it. It's been if I understand correctly, it was you running the sponsorship this week? It's a strange requirement, I know.
Is it me?
That's you. Yeah, it should be in the DMs. If it's not, you need to let me know so we can get that reset.
Yeah. Hey, good people of Earth. Have you ever found yourself looking at your money and thinking, gosh, this just isn't good enough? Tired of having 12 people in a room decide how much goods and services are going to cost? Well, I've got great news for you. I have been able to reduce that number from 12 to 1. I'm Cedric Youngelman, and I'm here to introduce you to the future of economics, CBDCs. I'm talking about Cedric-backed digital currency. Now, you might be asking, why should I switch from using my 300-year-old violence and debt-backed currency to one that is backed by credit? We could not agree more. Who needs credit when I have all the Cedric the world needs? In the world of Cedric, all goods and services come with a price tag, handpicked by me. How much for a loaf of bread, you ask? That'll be 2 Cedrics. A brand new car? That'll cost you 5,000 Cedrics. You want in on the real action? Watch your Cedric score ascend to U.S. debt levels for a mere pittance of 100 Cedrics a month. And you'll be able to embrace the debauchery normally reserved for the political and banking elite. Concerned about the exchange rate? Worry not. The only rate you need to care about is the Cedric rate, tied to your Cedric score. It's erratic, nonsensical, and gloriously self-serving. But hey, that's the future for you. So why linger in the past with boring old concepts like economic stability and fiscal responsibility? Embrace the future today and step into a world dominated entirely by Cedric's imagination. Terms and conditions apply. Not that you'll need to read them. Offer is void where sanity and logic apply. Get your airdrop Cedrics today by sending me copies of your state-issued ID and current income level.
It's perfect. I can see
Hey,
why
nice.
$8 here. All right, so Cedric.
What is that? What are you drinking?
IPA, Azote from Calusa Brewing. Double IPA. Tasty.
Is that a blonde one?
It's not
Cloudy.
Cloudy. Yes, it is very cloudy.
All right, so Cedric, you run a pod by the name of the Bitcoin Matrix, and I didn't know a whole lot about this podcast until, honestly, you had me on a few months back, and I have since
Before that, no one knew about it before you came on.
obviously, but
Right.
I've since gone down the rabbit hole, and holy moly, that is a wide range of guests, and you ask some of the better questions I've seen in live podcasting.
Like,
Like, how are you?
like he listens to
ah,
his guests, and then he asks relevant questions, which is not super prevalent. I wanted to know how you decide to have anybody on the pod, because it is a huge range of people that come on this thing.
Sure. I mean, it's like the first 50 guests were so easy. You know, it's kind of like a rapper's first album. You're cramming all your dreams into like the first season or something. So before I even started the show, I mean, there were just people I knew I had to have on. Now it's really what I want to spend my time on and what I'm interested in, because I don't get to listen to podcasts like I used to. So I now have to I have to replace what I want to spend my time on. So I have to be interested in subject matter, and I have to think it's interesting enough, and I can maybe add a perspective that's different from other shows if that's a guest that might be heard before. But really what I want to spend my time in and what I'm interested in, maybe who I want to talk to, or even who I might want to say hi to at a conference or get to know. That could be the criteria, you know.
We run a similar
Cool.
criteria here. So recently you had a guy, Peruvian Bull, on, somebody that I was, again, not familiar with. Thank you for making that introduction, even though it wasn't in person.
Sure.
You guys touched on the national debt, and I want to see if you've coalesced some sort of theory on what are the implications of the current Fed policies are going to be near or medium term.
Yeah, I think everything moves with the Fed, and I think the Fed is going to bring a lot more pain than people realize. I kind of think along the lines of maybe Tom Luongo that you're going to see high rates for at least another year, and maybe for 5 or 6 years or 8 or 10. I mean, the rates we are all are used to and accustomed to are kind of absurd. I know that they will trend back to zero. I know the greater arguments around interest payments are now going to be, you know, trending at $1.5 trillion or something like that. These things aren't sustainable, but I think there's a lot more pain to come. And I think you could see things like certain things look weird. So we could have maybe higher rates and maybe home prices come down. Things can get really funky, and we can have deflation in very strange ways. So I still think there's a lot of pain to come from the economy. I think the Fed is kind of told us what they're going to do. And I don't think they're necessarily trying to fight consumer price inflation.
nice. So if one of the Mexican alien mummies were the Fed, and right, the other one for you, what is it?
Oh, something like Quentin Tarantino, then I guess, if it's a Mexican alien lady.
That's a great answer.
I think she was a
Great answer.
vampire, though, wasn't she?
Because I mean,
Pretty
Satoshi could
close.
be like a 6-foot Mexican lady. We have no idea.
Pedro?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Oh, man.
Fair enough.
All right. You brought up Longo. That was another interview I wanted to bring up where you guys talked quite a bit about the European Central Bank, and a little bit about like how their policies differ from the Fed's policies, where basically Jerome Powell gets to say to the world what we're going to do, and somebody over at the ECB, whatever they say doesn't really matter until the Fed acts.
Well, he sees it more, I think, as a fight, and that they're fighting over control of money, and that London used to very much control our money through LIBOR. And he kind of still sees it as that maybe England has always controlled us in ways that we don't see. And what he's kind of arguing is that they're trying to destroy our dollar and our reputation, and have all that money repatriated and all that capital and wealth brought back to Europe. So Europe didn't want to send their gold and their wealth to America in World War II. They had to for safety, but they would love for all that to come back. That's wealth and power. It's their own money that's overseas in a lot of regards, their reserves, and it's also just the banking system. So if they could bring capital back to Europe, they'd have a lot more power in the world, and I'm sure they want the center of the world to be Europe, is what he's arguing. And he's arguing that it's some sort of, huge fight between the Fed and the ECB, and that the Fed is backed by the commercial banks. I don't know if it's a Patriot kind of thing for Powell, but I don't know who this Powell guy is, but that's kind of the way I think he sees it, is this massive fight between the two continents, and Europe wants to re-own their colonies. That's they kind of want to take back power very overtly, and you could kind of look at, he then brings Ukraine into it, and so he's saying the real battle here is between the Brits and the Russians, and this goes back centuries, and this is kingdoms, and the British have always been trying to figure out a way to take down the Russians, and some would argue that maybe the Brits and America propped up the Germans and the Nazis to take on the Russians, to unify power in Europe and take on the Russians. And when you look at the after effects of World War II, this is very strange, but the three most powerful countries to come out of World War II besides America are what were our greatest enemies in World War II: Japan, Germany, I forget who the other one is now. But and they had central banks.
Italy.
No, that's not what I was thinking of. But yeah, Japan and Germany. Maybe I was only two, but they shouldn't be world powers. Germany shouldn't be the biggest power in Europe based on the history of the 20th century. They lost that war. They were, overtly the bad guys and did really terrible, heinous things. And you look at like Operation Paperclip and how, we, brought all their highest up people and installed them in power in the US and in Russia. So it's like, who really owns who? And who's pulling the strings? I think that's kind of interesting with Luongo's point. And that is his argument, where they're not really worried about the American consumer. They're fighting a very different battle with interest rates. And they're trying to, we can break a lot of things in the States and have high unemployment, whatever the machinations of high interest rates. But as long as we end the ECB's power and maybe have their money crumble first, we win in that kind of vector of the war.
I want to know why you brought up Germany and Japan becoming two of the largest economies after World War II.
And centers of power politically.
Well, they also have been since before that. And I'm wondering,
right, but they lost they lost that war, and I understand that history is written by the winner, but the story I've been told is Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. They're the really bad people. We interned. They were so bad we put their people in camps in this country, which is a heinous thing. And and Germany, they had concentration camps, we're told, and horrible things. And not only did we help them rebuild, but we restored them to the highest order of power in those spheres of influence, when they shouldn't really have the right to lead. When you think about their track record as leaders, they attacked their neighbors, they attacked, our allies. So generally speaking, if you kick someone's ass, you might help them up. You might not beat them up when they're down. That's not really, a nice thing to do or an ethical thing to do. But you wouldn't really make them maybe, your equal.
I have a different view on what happened afterwards. I think those two countries got basically installed puppet governments and became vassals of the United States.
Because we won the war and installed our central bank. Yeah, sure. Same. It's kind of,
once it's a U.S. interest, they're going to invest in productivity. And these are two countries that were able to take on the world because they were in a demographic position and a geographical position to do so.
Right. And then so you could look at, okay, so then why would we bomb the pipeline that brings energy to Germany?
Whoa. Who says we bombed it?
Well, I mean, come on. Who says we? I mean, who says they? I mean, so, but there's all sorts of things at play here. And I think part of it is like you're peeling an onion and none of us know what's inside the onion when we get there. But you bring up someone like Luongo, and I think of someone like David Kahn. They ask very interesting questions, and they're kind of turning the way you look at something 180 degrees. and spinning how you might how I look at Ukraine, or how I look at things with LIBOR and just the fight over the interest rate, and things like that. So.
Wasn't the narrative after the World War II, especially for Japan, that the United States of America is gonna economically own that country? Like, the ties were like, the sanctions were made, I think, for Japan especially, and in Germany they hold back some of the sanctions because the French overdid it in World War One and basically backed them for a decade. They they had so many sanctions in the German government and people that pushed them kind of to make World War Two, and the fear was like, okay, let's not make those kind of not so great sanctions in order to like give them some breathing room, right? In order to not repeat again the same stuff over and over again. Like, and again, of course, then USSR was again the enemy, and you guys needed allies in the area, and Western Germany and then United Germany was right there to be an advantage, to be taking advantage or like have a foothold in the area, right? So, I mean, like,
That was the deal, right?
yeah, that's the deal. I think that's the narrative I learned also.
Eastern
Yeah,
Europeans stand on the front lines, and we the Americans, we pay for it, provide material.
yeah, like South Park, we're like the black guys. I mean, thanks.
That's one story or one way to look at it. I mean, no one wants to have our military people in their country. I mean, that's a huge disgrace to your sovereignty. And you got to pay for it. And you got to pay for it. That's insane.
That's actually
Romania.
I can argue against that also. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, especially nowadays, the last 10 years, we kind of want the Americans having base here in Greece.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
If we're so strong, why do you need our troops in your country?
No, it's not like that. It's like it's another kind of measure against someone else to invade or do something weird. Because they gotta think, okay, the Greeks are there. They have
right.
The place,
so in a way though, like, okay, great. You don't want someone else to invade, so you'll let us invade.
Yeah, but like,
and have like no rules, a piece of land in your country with no rules, where we could do anything the fuck we want. We could kill people. We could, diplomatic immunity.
That's the
like that doesn't make any sense. That's on your land.
Not anymore.
Not right. Yeah, right. And what kind of land do we get? We usually get like a nice port. I mean, it's not a fair trade, and it comes with our dollar network and all the rest of the petrodollar extortion and racket, and you're part of the club. So every transaction you make is now going to be monitored by the U.S. government. Every citizen that you have of your country is now monitored on our SWIFT. Get there
from one base, though.
In an ideal world,
it's part of the package. It's part of the package.
In an ideal world, it's not a fair trade, but
no, and we bully our way, across the world because there's 159, members in the club before we got to your country, and you're like, we're not going to stand up to the whole country.
To be honest, Cedric, I have a different view on that. I'm going to tell you a short story. Okay, as I was growing up, everybody was like anti-American over here in my parts. Like, they were like, "Oh, fuck it! Like, who are you? You think you are? You're the police of the world. How dare you? Why invade there? Why invade there? Why fake that? And why take lies on that? Like, it's all about the oil." And everybody was demonstrating and all that. And then Trump came and withdrew a little bit, right? He acted a little bit in the Monroe doctrine, right? And he kicked back and watched a little bit the inside of America affairs, and all of a sudden a vacuum created in the area, and all of a sudden we're like, oh fuck, the Americans are gone. Where the fuck are you guys going? Come on back. Like, no, wait, we don't like the guy that took power there. And everybody now is like complaining about the Americans leaving and how good we were until now. So, yeah, it's a complicated issue that it's not black and white.
It's a double-edged sword in that regard, especially any sort of power vacuum and who steps in and how power fragments after that. So it's kind of like the Saddam Hussein issue. It's like, or Gaddafi, and even the stories we hear about them, I'm not sure are true or accurate, or we hear different sides of the coin of that. Yeah, these things are very difficult to kind of analyze. And I think, though, it all goes really back to the money, though. I think that's where we'll find common ground. And when you kind of tease it out, though,
yep,
you find that the bank that owns all the banks is the Fed, and the ability to print money is the ability to wage war and even win no matter who wins that war. And all the things that can be done while war is waged, or pandemics are fought, or invisible enemies are declared, like terrorism or drugs or any of these things. It's just massive grift, massive corruption. And what pains me, though, is, and to your point, though, it's like there's innocent bystanders no matter which way we go. And that's what pains me, is like, how do you protect yourself from just being an innocent bystander in this, and just ward you and your family off? Because there are forces that are so large, and I just don't want to get caught in the fray. It's like the adage of, like, if I went into the street and I saw someone shot someone's wife, and I'm like, fuck, like, I just shot someone's wife. But these are two gang leaders. Like, am I all of a sudden like going to take allegiance to the gang leader whose wife was shot? I have no idea the issues between these gangs. I have no dog in that war. And they run around, hey, which side are you going to pick? I don't want to pick either side. This is, bad people on both sides is part of the problem. And I think it's even camouflaged who the bad people are. Is kind of like Tom Luongo's argument, and how deep this stuff goes. Like, you go down the rabbit hole with David Collum, and you start looking at like just something like 9/11, and like, was that like DEWs, and how the fucking buildings were vaporized, and there's no fucking rubble after that shit. I was in New York City that day and days after. Like, where'd the rubble go? You ask these weird questions.
You were there in the day?
I was in Midtown. I used to work on the 90th floor up until months before, but I was in Midtown that day. And I spent the whole day in Manhattan that day. But and I went down there 4 days after, or 5 days after, to help Bank of New York with their bullshit. And I saw all the videos like everyone else did, and there was no rubble. It was like a story and a half of rubble. There was 220 stories that fell that day, and there's a story and a half of rubble. That's kind of weird. And so you just start questioning, like, all these. I mean, I don't know. Did you guys see the moon landing that India just pulled off the other day?
Yeah.
It looks like an 8-bit video game. I mean, I don't know what's going on. So yeah, I think my biggest concern is it's really hard to discern what is right and wrong on these larger issues, or what how things should go politically. And I just don't want to get caught up in the fray, and I just want to be away from it.
I think especially after the 9/11 incident and the terrorism era that we entered through that, and like, right and wrong is very difficult to even like acknowledge a little bit, because like you don't know even the enemy, right? You don't even the enemy clearly who were fighting, even before a little bit the terrorism era, like the drug wars, era with Latin America, like who were actually the government fighting. Like, that policy against the drugs were like the ultimate like hypocrisy, when the same CIA planes were bringing like the drugs in the U.S. American cities, right? So I don't have nothing. It's clown world.
You opened up a new line of inquiry, though. Sociopaths. Because I think the hidden enemy at the top of a lot of these powerful structures are fucking sociopaths that don't give a fuck about any of us. They're just there to grow their own power and enrich themselves. And it's something that you and Colin talked a little bit about. So I wanted to get your idea of what kind of impact you think these possible actors have, and if they are having that impact.
Power kind of self-selects for sociopathy, but you just asked like a very basic question. I've asked this a lot of my relatives. You can kind of look at anybody in the political sphere or spectrum, and a lot of them are above 70 and some are over 80 years old. And my mother is now 81 years old, and I love her to death. And growing up, she was one of the smartest women I've ever met. And if she was in charge of the country, God help us all right now. All she's concerned about is eating ice cream every day. She can barely, manage her food and other things. And she's a very competent woman. She's still driving. She owns 2 homes, all these things. But, I don't think she'd be ruling the country. And the notion that that if she was getting up every day, that someone like Joe Biden or Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi is getting up at 80-something years old and working for me and my kids.
No.
Like, my mom can't get herself fucking food and I gotta go get it for her. She's fully capable, but she's like, I'll skip it today because she's just like, fuck it. And like, really, like, Joe Biden's working for me and my family, and like and it's just astonished me that people really think that there are people out there fighting some sort of fight between good and bad and evil on their behalf. It's just astonishing that people really buy into this. And then you look at something like Chicago and their new mayor and free housing and everything they're trying to do, and you're like, how many bad and they just get worse, the mayors in Chicago. And it's like people making like literally the last mayor was the first one in like 50 years not to get reelected. And so now you have the same voter base saying like, we got it wrong and we're going to get it right this time. And again, I go back to track record. And, if you have a track record of violence, I don't think you should get weaponry and things like that, or taking violence on others, and conquering others. Like, maybe we shouldn't give them more weapons, and let's fuck around and find out, So it's kind of the same thing with politics. And you have bad policies over and over. And people are like, hey, it's kind of like, yeah, we'll get it right this time. And what they're basically saying is like, I have no ambition or energy or going to put any effort into making my life better. But yeah, I do think that this person is doing it all for me. They're getting up and working really hard and tirelessly, not for any sort of incentive or reward or grift, but for me. I'm not willing to do it for myself, but I'm smart enough to outsource this. My life is shitty. I need help from the government, and I'm smart enough to figure out who should run the government. I need help, but I can figure out who should lead. It doesn't make sense. And so I think we've been dumbed down on purpose. There's nobody, at least in America, Yellow, I can't speak for where you are, but like very few people have critical thinking skills.
How was that done?
What?
How was that done?
Well, through the public schools that are run by the Nazis.
In what way?
How were we dumbed down in the public schools?
Yeah, how are the public schools used as a tool to dumb down Americans?
Well, they're built like factories or prison systems. They're basically designed to help you become a person who could tolerate being in a factory for 9 hours a day or more. Yeah. They kill kids any sort of imagination or creativity.
How?
So you're really getting into math, son? Like, this calculus thing is fascinating, right? Oh, the bell just rang. You're going to art. Like, it's over. You like that shit? Done. You're out. Not doing that for 3 more weeks. We do physics for a week every 6 weeks, son. We'll come back in 6 weeks. We'll get you back on that. And I mean, you could boil down K through 12 in about 8 weeks. to an average 10-year-old these days.
No,
it's really a daycare system. The whole public school system. It's really about daycare. It's really about, hey, we wanted to get everyone to work so we could tax everyone's wages and also decrease labor wages because you have more people working. If more people working, well, we get to take their kids at an earlier age and indoctrinate them younger. So, now we get them in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And you put them on this. What's amazing is you have somebody in DC figure out the whole curriculum for the whole country. That doesn't make sense. Just from a socio-economic, cultural standpoint. There's 60, 70 million kids in the system. They should all not be learning this. Every third grader shouldn't be learning the same thing across the country, just in terms of regional differences and cultural differences. And it's not even so. It should be sticking to very academic stuff. But
so
what I mean by that,
we should be getting rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah, totally.
Sounds like an extremist thing to do.
It's not, though. It's not an extreme. It's absurd. It was, I wasn't a Trump fan. I'm not a Trump fan, and I don't think he's a good guy per se. But when he was trying to it would seem like sabotage every institution in America, at first I was like, "Whoa, what is he doing? This is crazy." And then after a while, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I don't want a Department of Education. I think that should be done at the local level. I think there should be more independence and stuff done at the local level, and so that people can kind of figure out what would be best for their communities, just in that regard. And I think that money would be way better spent. Like Chicago spends $40,000 per year on kids.
Imagine how many more.
That's always
we could have if we didn't have a Department of Education.
What?
Imagine how many more F-35s we could have if we didn't have a Department of Education.
No, right. Well, we could then protect Yellow's country better. And we could take over more land there.
Exactly.
And then we could repatriate more of Yellow's resources and wealth so our kids don't even have to grow up and work.
What does he really have? Olive oil?
I don't know. Well, whatever oil he has, we'll take it. We'll put the base near the olive oil plant.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I like Americans. The question that you actually playing around now, Cedric, is about federalism and how needed or not it is. Because we used to have that kind of system before federalism, right?
You
Local
talk about
communities
America's a good guy.
were more powerful. They used to run their schools, but a lot of children were not going at school. They were working in farms and shit. So do you like that? Is it good or bad to have
totally
that
totally rethink education in that way, in the regards of I don't think every kid needs to go to college, especially if you're, not doing something that's a hard science or requires some sort of college degree. Maybe you're gonna be a plumber. I think you'd be better off at 18 using those years to apprentice and get going and on your way, and not taking on insurmountable debt. I think a lot of college people have been ensnared and tricked into debt they can't handle. I'm not for wiping debt clean. I think they still chose to engage in whatever they did, but I think we have to totally rethink education. And in terms of federalism, though, if the federal government wanted to be involved in education, I think they should really stick to very, very strict things like math, science, reading. And stay out of social things. And I think we saw a lot of that with during the pandemic, when my kids were on Zoom and they were talking about rabbits and feelings all day long, and there was no math, science, and reading in the education. And I think that's the most important thing that they should be learning at school, and things like coding and engineering and home economics and how to run and financial independence or financial planning. You ask a kid coming out of high school how to balance a checkbook or how to manage their finances, they wouldn't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Well, to be fair, I don't think any of them are going to know what a checkbook is at that point.
Sure.
To be fair, do we even need checkbooks anymore?
That's where I am.
Right. Well, to be fair, do we even need money? Because we're going to have Cedric bucks.
Balance your lightning channel.
Cedric's going to send them
now
whatever
you're
they
talking.
need.
Now you're talking.
Right.
I
They'll
don't know
get
why
free
that happened.
Netflix. Be fucking great. You know, and they'll get McDonald's delivered to the house through a tube.
Mm.
And because that'll be, technology and all. Plant-based McDonald's.
Plant-based.
More freedom to Greece. You're welcome, Swala. Come.
I mean, isn't that where this is all going in terms of? And I think we already have a CBDC here in America, and I think there's tremendous surveillance, and it's just patchworked, and it's not one company like WeChat in China or something. But that's what we talk about at the top of the show, and that's where this is all kind of going when we talk about this. And eventually, I think the most dystopian thing would be sort of like a global money that's not Bitcoin. And we have that in some levels and layers with the dollar. That's a global reserve currency. And like we were talking about with sanctions and the SWIFT network and their ability to sort of, but I think CBDCs would be like that times a trillion. And even at the national level and then eventually a global level. And I'm not saying they'll get there, but I think that's where that's the slippery slope we're on. And then, it doesn't really matter if you have an American base or, an Ecuadorian base in your country. It's just a base, and there are bases everywhere. And, you're living in smart cities, and everything's a swipe, and everything's an eyeball scan. And you have no free will in that environment.
You have the illusion of free will.
I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
You get to watch on the TV. You get to pick what you want to watch on TV. You get to choose your food at Whole Foods when you scan your palm. It's free. Freedom of choice, right?
Supermarket seems like a lot of choice. There's like 6 companies making all that shit. There
was a great article. I don't remember now who.
Must have been great.
Who wrote it about the illusion of like choice when you have so many choices. When you have so many choices, like actually the brain like scrambles and he cannot choose basically nothing.
The paralysis of analysis.
Yeah.
And that takes people down too. And I don't know.
I gotta ask, it is a bear market, Cedric. Your podcast is called the Bitcoin Matrix podcast. So who is Cypher to you?
Cypher. Wow.
What does he mean to you?
Wow. So,
yeah.
Not getting political. My only Cypher would be my wife. I could never name another man in that regard. Or woman, not my wife. I couldn't. If you're asking me, like, what would be my Mount Rushmore of Bitcoiners?
No, I think he's asking.
You don't have to personalize it, like even like in around Bitcoin in general and the bear market, like
this bear. Like, what are the best bear market voice? The best 2 bear market voices I've ever heard. American Hodl, when he was on Twitter in 2018, 2019, before he disappeared, 2020, whenever he left, and Bitcoin Tina. And for me, that was around the time when I started listening to Bitcoin podcasts exclusively. I stopped listening to my favorite podcast of all time that wasn't a Bitcoin podcast. And around that time, I started, I loved Marty's show, Tales from Crypt, still do. And he was probably the first show I started just listening for. Like, I like the host a lot. But before that, what Bitcoin did with Peter McCormack, he had all the very big people on the beginning, and Peter was traveling the world, and we were kind of hearing like he was at this conference and that conference. And so I'm trying to get in the world of Bitcoin. I'm trying to understand this thing. And then I came across Bitcoin Tina, American Hodl, and they weren't the first 2, but just their voice in the bear market. American Hodl, because he was relentless optimist, and he would post those screenshots. I bought 10 million sats today. I bought 500 million sats today. 6.15 big titty bitch. All this shit was just relentless, and but it was like Rocky type stuff, or like it had like this Jay-Z type ethos where like you could do it, and like we're doing it, and I did, and he was leading from like by example, and kind of sharing his triumphs and tribulations and how hard it was for him and where he was now, and then just the levels he was going through, and just how committed though he was to each new sat. And then Bitcoin Tina, I think, is just like a very brilliant thinker and just was really great at getting across like how incredibly valuable this thing is and where we are, and ways of looking at it. And then, of course, there were other voices. I mean, Pierre Richard is a very important voice to me always, and was very important that he was my first guest. I drunk DM'd him on like a Saturday night, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and like, hey, I'm doing a show, and like 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. He was like, sure, how about Wednesday morning? I was like, fuck. Now what? And so yeah, and Safedine with big, and then even VJ, like his article or his opus before he turned it into a book. I think that's like, still to me, it's like almost like the Cliff Notes of Bitcoin Standard of Safe's book, like, or like just really the layman's version, and she's explained it so well and what's going on here. And then like I remember just listening to Bitcoin Tina one day, walking out of fucking work and on a lunch break, and just listening to a pod, probably on fucking Pomp or some shit. There was that one episode with Murad on Pomp that like blew my mind as well. And I was like, holy fucking shit, this is like, time just stopped. I'm like, I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know if this is going to be like a 1-year thing, a 10-year thing, or a 100-year thing. But like, this is very different than anything else I've come across. And I think a lot of ways I was looking for an opportunity like that my whole life. Like, I think a lot of people are, you hear somebody who's like, oh, I was an early employee at Grubhub, and like they caught a rocket ship or something. And I'm not saying Bitcoin is a get rich quick scheme or a rocket ship, but something that you could believe in so much and have so much conviction in, and see that asymmetry of knowledge out there, and say, okay, I understand this thing, and I don't have to. What's amazing about Bitcoin and being coming from my background as an accountant is like, Bitcoin is a ledger, and it's just like you can't really argue with me about anything about this thing. Now that I've learned, and I'm still learning about it, and there's so much to learn. But there's certain things around like 21 million Bitcoin, and a block every roughly 10 minutes, and the reward, and you just can't argue with me. And when you compare with other things, and when I mean us, anyone who talks about these things, it's like, whereas anything else in the world, like real estate, like, oh, I really believe that if we got this lot on this corner and we bought it in X amount of time, we build this restaurant or get this liquor light, like we can argue about so many things, and you can't be in control of it. And you can't necessarily determine the outcome of your, what I'll call a bet, because other people can get involved and manipulate that thing politically. So someone knows the mayor, and they got that lot before you did at a better price, or they're going to get a liquor license and you're not, or the art you bought, and now everyone hates that artist, whatever it is. Here's something that, like, if you understand it, like, no one can come between you and this thing. And then when you understand that, and it's money, like, wow, you can take yourself out of this rat race, this Red Queen's race of inflation over long periods of time that destroy what I think a family man or woman who's just trying to raise a family, and like we were talking about earlier in the show, just protect themselves from everything going on. So how do I just figure out how to keep up with like expenses? Like, you just, at some point you're like, okay, this is my life. I make X, we spend Y, and I just want to do this for the next 20 years. And then like, okay, now Y costs 10Y, and you get a 3% raise, sir. And you're like, okay,
has a multiplier.
Fuck. And you're just figuring out this thing every year. Like, how do I, and you could talk about entrepreneurialism and then different ways of beating inflation and what you can do. But at some point you're like, I want to live a life, and I just want to take myself out of that problem. And Bitcoin provides that. And then when you just realize, like, wow, like, I don't have to change the world. I don't, if of all these people farming this horrible land, I don't have to convince everyone that we should take a year off and let it regenerate, and we should all do it my way. And I know the right, I could just go find a decent plot of land for myself and get myself out of that horrible system. and just choose what parts I enter into. So how am I going to economically provide for my family? Am I going to have a fiat job, or am I going to go full Bitcoin? Whatever it is. But you can save in Bitcoin. You don't have to get paid in Bitcoin. You just fucking convert. That's all you do. You just convert, and you can convert whatever you could afford to hold. You use savings technology. That's what Pierre got across. It's not spending tech. It's not even investing tech. It's just savings tech. So and this is what Bitcoin Tina talked about too. It's like, so in the olden days, in biblical times, you just wanted to have 30% of your wealth in your business. So whether you make money as a job or you have a business, whatever, 30% of your business, 30% probably in your home. You probably have a home and it's probably worth something. And then you just want to have 30% in savings and just not have risk. You have business risk. You own a business. But now all of us have to spend all our time, and I forget who I was going over with this, but basically we're all trying to recreate money in our spare time, trying to recreate good money, right? So you're like, okay, you get 10% Microsoft, 10% Amazon, 10% Google, and that will maintain your purchasing power into the future. Oh, you mean fucking money?
Exactly.
No. You need REITs, and you need stocks, and you need bonds, and you need all these things to get yourself into the future so that you don't lose your fucking money. Oh, even I just need good money. No. You need to go to Wall Street and you need to give your money to this guy and that guy. And then you have the whole, Wall Street shouldn't be a thing. We shouldn't, the financialization of the economy takes talent out of the economy, right? So instead of creating cures for fucking cancer, which they probably have or whatever. What?
I said it should be a thing. It should just be a lot smaller.
It should be a way smaller. Yeah. Like maybe 1/10 of 1%, 0.01% of the economy.
There you go.
Or 1% of the economy. Who are the risk takers? That's all it should be. It shouldn't be mom and pops trying to figure out how to get their money now into the future by getting it out of money into something else. The craziest thing I ever saw, and I had to go through this in horrible ways, and we can get into this, but just the baseball cards and collectibles now. And so my father ended up giving me and my brother, he gave him a Wayne Gretzky rookie card and me a Michael Jordan rookie card. And he died weeks later. Oh, fuck. Yeah, great. This is awesome. My brother started basing his life off this Wayne Gretzky rookie card, and just everything. This was everything. So now he's got to figure out how do you sell it? Right? Well, what is it worth? And so when he was thinking about it, this was at the peak of COVID. One of these things sold for $3 million, right? But you got to get it graded. You have to go to an auction house. You got to fucking, you got to pay this guy commission, that guy commission, and everything. And it's all a racket. And he's trying to get it graded. And, that's a whole scheme because, am I really going to mail in my my card and hope you mail me back my $3 million card without swapping it out for your $60,000 version of it and saying, hey, yeah, here's your card. It's not worth much. And you have to prepay. So whatever you think it's worth, because they grade it up. So if you think it's worth $10,000, that's $100. You think it's worth $100,000, that's $10,000 to get it graded. And so he's trying to go around, and they brought it to the graders, and he found out it's fake.
Oh shit!
And
really?
Yeah, it was a fake card. And he was, building a collection around it too, because everyone was telling me, if you got a Wayne Gretzky rookie card, you can be a baller when you go to these conferences, and you could sell other things because people will listen to you. He built up a collection around it, and he found out it's fake. Why is it fake? We're not going to tell you how we know it's fake. You're a fucking faker. We're not going to tell you how we caught you. Hey, no, I'm not a counterfeiter. My dad bought this for me, and he's a long-time collector. And can you just tell me how it's fake? He had to go track down an FBI agent, an ex-FBI agent, who finally told him, well, you have a Topps rookie card here, but it's on Fleer paper. The counterfeiters use the wrong paper.
Fuck.
Right. So you go to these conferences, these baseball card shows, and they sell all kinds of fucking cards. But basically all the card sellers are insiders, right? And they got the connection with the producers. They get all the stuff that's quote unquote rare. You go here and everyone's getting fleeced. And all everyone's trying to do is get rid of shitty paper or, for less shitty paper.
You just described the entire shitcoin market.
That's what I saw. So instead of buying, shares or slices of a $26,000 Bitcoin, you're like, I bought a $4 piece of shit that might be my Bitcoin one day. And I go through this with people when I used to try to convince people that Bitcoin was something they should look into. And I now understand like why no one ever listens to the orange pill spiel. The orange pill spiel. Because first of all, they're like, you sound like a fucking lunatic. And I don't want to agree with you because I don't ever want to sound like you. They're like, I don't ever want to sound like a nutcase like you. So they're like, you're crazy. And if you were right, I'm going to sound like you. So let's just ignore this. But what they're also doing is they're sizing you up. They're like, well, Greg fucking's been talking about this for a while. So he must have 18,000 of these fucking things that he probably bought them at $2 a piece. Motherfucker's been talking about them a long time. So I'm never going to catch up with Greg. So I don't want it at all. And I want Greg to be wrong. Because it's me versus Greg. That's how the fiat system works. It's who you know, what you know.
So.
Usually, right? And they're like, yeah. And Greg's probably not right about this. Because if Greg was actually fucking right about this, CNN would have told me about it. Fox would have told me about it. It wouldn't be Greg. So I want Greg to be I want Greg to be wrong. I want Greg to be wrong, and I want to go find my own fucking lottery ticket.
Yeah, fuck you, Greg.
And rub it in Greg's face. So I'm going to root against Greg.
Fuck you, Greg.
I'm going to ignore what he says, and I'm going to go out and do my own thing. Because if Greg's right, I will never catch up to him. And it's not about most people, and this is what I learned from Bitcoin Tina. Most people in this world are trading against Greg and Pedro and Rope and Yellow, and they're not trading against their future self. They're trading against their prior self. Oh, I was an idiot. I didn't listen to Greg when Greg told me about this at 20,000, at 10,000. And now I don't want Greg to be right. And they trade with other people, but they never trade with their future self. What can I do to make future me happy? And most people are like, I don't care about future me. I'm drinking a Starbucks. I'm going to go have a whiskey and I'm going to go party and hope Greg is wrong and hope that we all end up on Social Security because fuck it. Nihilism
what's the degree,
and fiat.
What's the degree you're going to sacrifice something from now in order for future Cedric to be in a way better, you and your family?
Sacrificed a ton. And I don't even mean by just, that doesn't mean I bought a lot of Bitcoin or anything. I have a meager, I just do what I can. I save, but whatever I can, we sacrifice a lot to do what we can and save for our future.
Are you sacrificing memories with your kids?
That's tough, and that's the balance. And
where's the balance?
We try not to do that. And there are different kinds of memories. Do we go to Disney? No, and there could be memories lost. And I'm not saying we went to Universal, and you could create good memories. There's a fucking lot of demons at Universal, so I don't know. We created some good memories and some bad memories, But that's a balance. And I definitely think there is a little bit of and that's twofold. I talked a lot about this with Luongo. So there is this thing of where, I'm fucking going to just buy some sats and check out, bro, and call me in 10 years. And, I do think that what we kind of do is we try to be ambitious. I work 2 jobs. The pod is my second job. I have a full-time job. I squeeze that in around my wife and kids. It's fucking really hard to do. I love doing it, and it's really hard. And there are a lot of times I'm like, "Fuck this! I shouldn't even do this anymore." And I could go create more memories with my family. And there's a gamble there because I'm hoping, hey, maybe if I get the pod where I want it to go, and maybe I can create different memories then with my family. And I gotta give up some memories now. And that's
what you just said, Cedric, is your cipher moment. Exactly what I meant before. How in touch are you with the guy? Because in this space, everybody wants to be Neo, right? But especially in the bear market, you gotta know you're in a cipher.
I don't want to.
How much you're willing to sacrifice.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to be Neo, but I think. Well, I mean, I don't want to be Neo, but I think everybody has a sliver of there are things about Neo. Everyone wants to be the hero in their story, their journey.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone wants to be the star or the focal point of everyone's story, or the Neo. Everyone wants to be a Neo, I think. Some people want to be the Neo, and I think that's as I always joke about when people are like, oh, Seth has a podcast. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, it's like telling people I'm a day trader. Like, I'm like, it just doesn't resonate with anyone who's never heard of the podcast because they're like, cool, everyone has a podcast. My cousin has a podcast. How's your podcast? Oh, it's going good. Oh, yeah, sure, bro. It's probably going great. No, it's going okay. Yeah, cool. My cousin's podcast is going good too. It's about wedding singers. He's a wedding singer, and it's about wedding songs, and like, okay, and like it's not a cool thing to talk about, and so in that regard, like everyone's a podcaster, but like some people are the podcaster, like Joe Rogan or or something like that, and they exist. But so I think everyone wants to be like a king. But I don't think not everyone wants to be the king. What I mean by that, and that was like an interesting thing is like, because like when people hear I have a podcast, they think like it's me ranting for an hour,
isn't it?
That's their first impression, just because they're like, whoa, what do you do? Like, who do you talk to? They've not. I talked to Dr. Seyfried Namus, and he is
exactly
from where, a doctor of what?
He sounds foreign.
So I don't know, but and so I didn't start a podcast so I could talk and be on a soapbox. I started it so I could ask questions of really interesting people. So, but yeah, I do think there's those cipher moments where you're trying to figure out what you're trying to get out of this journey and where you should spend your time and how much you should live for today and how much you should live for tomorrow that might not come or something like that. I get that.
Nice. Does anybody else has a question? Bedroom?
Well,
Barry.
We're actually at about time for Barry to ask the
we are?
Yeah,
nice.
I was Barry, can you whip up a British accent for us and go through the RD question? You freeloader? Barry.
Gets the mic and just drops it. Doesn't even say anything.
Come on, Barry.
Shocking.
Hello, Governor. All right, Cedric. If the meme factory existed, which we all know it doesn't, which member would you retweet, which would you mute, and which would you like?
Zap.
Oh,
okay.
Who would you zap?
All right, I got this. So I would retweet Sean. I would like Yellow. And I'm going to mute Greg.
Collect mutes.
Classic.
Who are you zapping?
And zap, what is that? Oh, giving money to?
Yeah,
Stats?
like on Noster. Who would you zap?
Who am I zapping? Ropium. And did I meet you on a beach in Miami at a large party? Not a one-on-one.
No, that would me.
I'm convinced.
Why are you laughing?
What? I wasn't there.
Yeah, but why are you
laughing?
laughing?
So that's a yes.
That's a yes.
No, what you're talking. I do.
That's a.
I do not sniff my fingers.
He was probably sniffing his fingers, and you saw it, right? And he got the embarrassed down.
It's easy to spot when he's got his
face.
Yeah.
When you were meeting him.
Thought I met you at the beach party after Bitcoin conference one night with Big Sean. Might have been someone else.
That was someone else. But so just to be clear, you did zap me.
Yes.
That was probably Chelly.
That was Chelly?
Yep.
Oh, with Sean. Yeah, it was probably with Sally. All right, so Cedric, you've been super generous with your time tonight. I want to give you the opportunity to tell all the folks who are listening or watching what you're up to these days, where they can find you, what kind of projects you're working on.
Yeah, so I'm working on the Bitcoin Matrix podcast. You can find us on YouTube. Just look up Bitcoin Matrix. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, wherever you dome your pods. And we have philosophical conversations about Bitcoin, the economic, social, and cultural impacts of Bitcoin and the future of money. We got really dope guests lined up for the fall, including Tor Demeester and Dr. Seyfried Namus is coming back. I'm sure David Collum and Tom Luongo as well. So check it out. I'd love for you to tune in.
Nice.
Can't recommend his pod strongly enough. You guys will enjoy it.
Appreciate it.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. We'll catch you on the next one.
Go Pius.
Thanks, Cedric.
What?
Go Pius.
Oh, my God. Have a good night, everybody.
Peace.